Salvete omnes! Today we are going to talk about the comparison of adjectives. So this is the comparative and the superlative adjective that we will use to enrich our Latin and add more description to our adjectives. So let us start with the comparative. So the comparative adjective is what we use to say that something is of a greater degree. So in English, this is when we would say use ER or more, like faster or more industrious, right? So this is normally used in a comparison where we're saying that one thing is, as I said, faster, more industrious, slower, smaller than another thing. Okay, so how do we form comparative adjectives in Latin? So what we will do in Latin to form our comparative adjectives is we will add IOR to the stem. So once we transform the adjective by adding IOR, we then decline it like a third declension adjective, except normally not an I stem. So why don't we look at a specific example? So let's take an adjective like clarus a right? So bright or famous. So we'll take the stem clar, we will add IOR, and then we'll decline using our normal third declension endings, right? So for the masculine feminine, we see clarior, clariores, clariori, clariorum, clariore, and then the plural, clariores, clariorum, clarioribus, clariores, clarioribus. Now, the only thing we really need to be careful with is when we come to the neuter and we see that in the nominative, we don't have our IOR that signals to us that we're dealing with a comparative. Here for the neuter, nominative, and accusative, we just have clarius. But we still have that I there, so it's helping us to know that we have a comparative. And then the IOR joins us for the rest, right? So it's clarius, clarioribus, clarioris, clariori, clarius, clariore, clariora, clariorum, clarioribus, clariora, clarioribus. So if we want to take a look at one more to help make sure we've gotten our head around it, so we'd look at ingeniosus, right, to mean talented. So we're going to take ingenios and add IOR, ingeniosior, ingeniosiores, ingeniosiori, so on from there. Now, once again, when we're looking at the neuter, we will see that the nominative and accusative singular doesn't have the ior, right? It's ingeniosius. So we have the I, but not IOR, ingeniosius. And then the IOR comes back in the genitive singular, ingeniosioris. All right. So now that we know how to form our comparative adjectives, how do we use them in a sentence? And in fact, we have two methods. We can make a comparison using quam or using an ablative of comparison. So here we have an example of the same sentence written in two ways. So, sua epistola quam brevior mea epistola est. Her, or his or her, we don't know, his or her letter is shorter than my letter. So notice here that the two things being compared are in the same case. So his letter or her letter, the subject of the sentence, sua epistola, is in the nominative as the subject. Mea epistola, my letter, is also in the nominative case. And then we are going to use quam to show us that there is a comparison, right? So epistola quam brevior mea epistola est. Her letter is shorter than my letter. So now if we want to use that same sentence, but use the ablative of comparison, we can do it. Right here, sua epistola brevior mea epistola est. So his or her letter is shorter, right? So we still have the subject and the nominative, but here, instead of having the thing that's being compared to, my letter, in the nominative, we're going to put it in the ablative. No use of quam, just the thing being compared in the ablative. Sua epistola brevior, mea epistola est. Right? So really the same sentence, but said in two different ways. And let us look at one more example. So now let's look at a different sentence where we can see the thing we're comparing in the accusative. So, virum quim vidi, clariorum quam ciceronum est. The man whom I saw is more famous than Cicero. Right, so we have virum as the accusative because it's the object of vidi. And to modify it properly, we have clariorum in the accusative masculine singular. And because we're doing a comparison with quam, ciceronum is also in the accusative. So virum quim vidi, clariorum quam ciceronum est. But we could say this same sentence in a different way using the ablative of comparison. Virum quim vidi, clariorum cicerone est. The man whom I saw is more famous than Cicero. So here we're going to eliminate quam and move ciceronum from the accusative to the ablative of comparison. So both of these sentences saying the same thing. The man whom I saw is more famous than Cicero. Now let's turn our attention to superlatives. So superlatives are how we say that something is the most, or est, as we would often use in English. And in Latin, the superlative can also just mean very. So to use our earlier examples, right, fast would become very fast or the fastest, and industrious would become very industrious or the most industrious for translating our superlatives into Latin. And how we form them in Latin with regular adjectives is we add issimus, issima, issimum, right? Issimus for the masculine, issima for feminine, and issimum for neuter. And then we decline just like a first, second declension adjective. So here we can look at our example, clarus. We're going to take clar, add issimus, issima, issimum, and then we decline. Clarissimus, clarissimi, clarissimo, clarissimum, clarissimo. Okay, for the masculine singular. For the feminine singular, clarissima, clarissime, clarissime, clarissimam, clarissima. And the neuter, clarissimum, clarissimi, clarissimo, clarissimum, clarissimo. Okay, so really the declining here is very easy. Just the first to second declension endings that we know very well. We just have to remember to add our issimus, issima, issimum. And let's see this in a sentence too, right? If we were answering our earlier sentences, revera sue epistolae brevissime sunt, right? Indeed, or truly, his letters or her letters are very short, or his or her letters are the shortest. Or we could say, non lunugas narrare, Cicero clarissimus est. Right? So don't talk nonsense. Cicero is the most famous, or Cicero is very famous, but I think here we'd say the most. Now, of course, it wouldn't be Latin if we didn't have a few irregulars. So there are some irregular adjectives that we just kind of need to memorize. So these are ones where the comparative and the superlative is a completely different form. So here we'll look at bonus aum, which in the comparative goes to melior, or melius, right? So quite a bit different stem. And then in the superlative, it becomes optimus, optima, optimum, right? So good, better, best, bonus, melior, optimus. Similarly, great, magnus, maior, maximus. Bad, malus, peior, pessimus. small, parvus minor, minimus, and much or more, multus plus, plurimus. So these are forms that we just need to memorize the stem change, but the good thing is that once we're there, they decline just as we would expect. So no tricks on that part. And last, but certainly not least, we want to look at how to form the superlatives for adjectives that end in ER, because they're not going to have the ismus that we are used to. Instead of adding the double S, we're going to see a double R. So if we have something like pulcher, pulcra, pulcrum, instead of adding double S, we'll add double R. So pulcher will become pulcherimus, pulcherima, pulcherimum. But still declining just like a normal first, second declension adjective. So that part is, as you can see here, looking at the singular, just the same. So another example, miser, right, also ending in ER, miser would become miserimus, right, miserimus. And celer, quick, would become celerimus, celerimus with the double R. All right, so that is our look at the comparative adjectives. We'll see you next time. Valete!